States by date of entry into the Union. Delaware, December 7th, 1787.
Fire!
Pennsylvania, December 12th, 1787.
Fire!
New Jersey, December 18th, 1887.
Fire!
Georgia, January 2nd, 1788.
Fire!
Connecticut, January 9th, 1788.
Fire!
Massachusetts, February 6th, 1788.
Fire!
Maryland, April 28th, 1788.
Fire!
South Carolina, May 23rd, 1788.
Fire!
New Hampshire, June 21st, 1788.
Fire!
Virginia, June 25th, 1788.
Fire!
New York, July 26th, 1788.
Fire!
North Carolina, November 21st, 1789.
Fire!
Rhode Island, May 29th, 1790.
Fire!
Vermont, May 4th, 1791.
Fire!
Kentucky, June 1st, 1792.
Fire!
Tennessee, June 1st, 1796.
Fire!
Ohio, March 1st, 1803.
Fire!
Louisiana, April 30th, 1812.
Fire!
Indiana, December 11th, 1816.
Fire!
Mississippi, December 10th, 1817.
Fire!
Illinois, December 3rd, 1818.
Fire!
Alabama, December 14th, 1819.
Fire!
Maine, March 15th, 1820.
Fire!
Missouri, August 10th, 1821.
Fire!
Arkansas, June 15th, 1836.
Fire!
Michigan, January 26th, 1837.
Fire!
Florida, March 3rd, 1845.
Fire!
Texas, December 29th, 1845.
Fire!
Iowa, December 28th, 1846. Wisconsin, May 29th, 1848. California, September 9th, 1850. Minnesota, May 11th, 1858. Oregon, February 14th, 1859. Kansas, January 29th, 1861. West Virginia, June 20th, 1863. Nevada, August 31st, 1864. Nebraska, March 1st, 1867. Colorado, August 1st, 1876. North Dakota, November 2nd, 1889. South Dakota, November 2nd, 1889. Montana, November 8th, 1889. Washington, November 11th, 1889. Idaho, July 3rd, 1890. Wyoming, July 10th, 1890. Utah, January 4th, 1896. Oklahoma, November 16th, 1907. New Mexico, January 6th, 1912. Arizona, February 14th, 1912. Alaska, January 3rd, 1959. And finally, Hawaii, August 21st, 1959.
I want to welcome you to the seventh annual and first punctual Lower Manhattan Independence Day Parade. Before we start, we have a number of distinguished guests and office holders who are showing their support for this event by their attendance. Well, Martha Gallo, I don't know if I call you an office holder, but a very important person, chairman of Battery Park City that runs a lot of downtown New York. We have Joanne Simons from the next district. You are State Assembly person from the next district. We have State Assembly district from our district, Charles Fall, who is here. Carlina Rivera, council person. Some of these people are running against each other. This is not a political event, but we are really gratified that they have come, to support our event here. Okay. Do I need to be louder? A little closer? There we go. Okay, louder. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we are here to celebrate what is known as America's birthday. Actually, the Declaration of Independence was read on July 9th, whereupon people were so excited that they marched to Bowling Green and tore down the statue of George III. But we remember the key words of the Declaration of Independence, that certain truths are held to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we're endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to secure those rights, governments are instituted among men who derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. After he had written this or presented it to the Congress, Jefferson wrote a letter to Richard Henry Lee, who had introduced the resolution in Congress to adopt the Declaration. And Jefferson said this was not an original statement or composition by me. This was what I felt to be the expression of the American mind at the time. So people may think these were radical, but this is what Americans were thinking in 1976. 1776, 1976, 2016, 2022, and even today. I want to start off our program by introducing one of our longest and most steadfast supporters, former borough president and current council person, Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much. It is a real honor to be here today. We have marched when it's been 100 degrees and when it's cooler, and today is perfect. And I want to thank Jim and Ambrose and certainly Catherine. Every year we learn more about Lower Manhattan, and even in non-July 4th times, we've been to the Trinity gravesite to see Mr. Hamilton and many others, all thanks to this group of people. So I want to thank you so much, Lower Manhattan historians. We're here today celebrating July 4th. It's a challenging time. It's great to be gathered. It's great to be supportive of the United States and our beloved New York City. But what I wanted to do was to read something from the beloved Ruth Bader Ginsburg, something she said in 2019, because to me, this is what July 4th is all about. So what she said is the following. I met her once. She was at the dinner at the 92nd Street Y on Lexington Avenue, and she was at a table nearby. There were about 30 people at the dinner, and I was, kind of nervous. Nothing makes me nervous, but saying hello to such an amazing woman. You weren't supposed to take photographs, so nobody did. But I went over to her and understand at the time I was borough president. And I said, I'm Gail Brewer, Manhattan Borough President. And she looked at me and she gave me the dates of borough presidents in the past. And then she walked off. This woman was brilliant. And of course, Constance Baker Motley was her favorite. First black woman to be a borough president, and she was able just to talk about her for a few minutes and then took off. And this is the kind of mind that she had, which was phenomenal. So in 2019, she said, at a reception some years ago, a college student asked if I could help her with an assignment. She had one question and hoped to compose a paper by asking diverse people to respond. What she asked that I think was the largest problem for the 21st century. My mind raced past privacy concerns, terrorist threats, deadly weapons, and fierce partisan divisions. But then I thought of Thurgood Marshall praised the evolution of our Constitution's opening words. We the people, to embrace once excluded, ignored, or undervalued people. People held in human bondage, Native Americans, women, even men who own no real property. I thought of our nation's motto, E pluribus unum, of many one. The largest challenge we face is to make or keep our communities places where we can tolerate, even embrace our differences, and to do so while pulling together the common good of many one is the main aspiration. I believe, and I think everyone here believes the same, and July 4th is the day to believe. It is my hope for our country and our world. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to introduce to you a very special person, and we're privileged to have her here. This is Ms. Worry Price, who's the founder and president of the Battery Park Conservancy. There's a statement in the gospel that by their fruits you shall know them. Look around you. Those of you who have been here long enough remember the before. This is the after. This beautiful and magnificent urban setting of beauty and tranquility. She was the leader who brought this about. Worry, we're delighted to have you.
It's a great honor to always follow in a woman who I treasure and is the model of what is public service. Her passion is to serve in whatever capacity us as citizens vote her into, and I will never ever find anyone as devoted as you are to New York City, Gail. So just hats off to you for serving now back in the council. The idea that this park is our birthplace park. It is the longest continuous use public space in the city of New York. From the time the first Americans fished from its banks, to the first settlers. It really has embodied all of the footsteps of what we celebrate today. It was in terrible shape when I saw it, and I understood it was a major destination and a first or second impression of everyone worldwide that came to see our city. And what did it say about us as a civilized society? This is the way we treat a landmark. This is where we treat our birthplace. It was awful. It was depressing. It was all of urban blight that all of us remember, forgotten. The Parks Department kept it clean, but there was no imaginative use of this landscape and nothing to interpret its rich history. We set out to change that. You'll look around, you'll see now 240,000 square feet of gardens. They told me, oh, Parks doesn't do gardens. We don't have gardeners. I said, well, I think we have to raise kind of from generous New Yorkers the funds to say, yes, we can. Now we have the largest perennial gardens in North America that are free to the public 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. They are never closed. So that sense of equality, I know, I feel in my heart, especially as Gail reflects on the Supreme Court. And I have a quick, I was a personal friend of Justice Clark. He's the only Supreme Court justice that quit the court and joined a lower court. That is a good model for justices, and it's also to where our nation is going, how we have to keep the faith and hope that we can still contribute to the values that we believe in. The other side, from equality to happiness, that's what this is all about. If you're not have a smile on your face when you walk these 25 acres, I have failed. And the fountain is working, the new playground is open, sea glass is terrific. This town green, which is it's always been public assembly, that's what it is today, but it's about our history. It drew me. We now will interpret it more, now that the Battery Conservancy was created to redesign and rebuild, but to activate. Now that for us, our master plan is completed, we will continue to work with the city on resilience, but our funds can now go into interpretation, can now go into cultural and educational programming. And history, I speak for my chairman who just rented the 5 floors of One Broadway where George Washington had his first office and would walk the Battery, his diaries relate to that, has taken the first 5 floors. So I have a chairman who loves New York history, wants to make that a fundamental new thrust of what we are, but I'm so glad that you're all here and you celebrate this day, and we hope to continue it on and contribute more in programming to your efforts.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce one of our founders and the man who had the inspiration for this event, my friend James Kaplan.
Okay, as Ambrose said, this is the 7th year we've done our July 4th march through Lower Manhattan, and it's based on the fact that we believe that Lower Manhattan and this here, New York City, is one of the most, if not the most important place in the country relative to the American Revolution, and very few people recognize it. We from the Francis Tavern Museum, I'm a walking tour guide and lawyer by training, we used to give an all-night tour starting at 2 in the morning till 6 in the morning, and we thought that got a lot of people, but we always noticed at the end of the tour, other than the cannon firing, there were no events here in Lower Manhattan. In fact, the major event in New York City on July 4th was by far the Nathan's hot dog eating contest in Coney Island. So one morning we tried, one year we thought we'd try to get some coverage for us. It failed, and once again, much to our disappointment, the lead story was whether Joey Chestnut had retained his crown as the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. So several of us met at the Francis Tavern Museum, and we figured, look, this is the most important, largest city in the country. It has the most important Revolutionary War sites in the country, although most people don't know that. And on July 4th, can't we do better than the Nathan's hot dog eating contest?
Yes!
So we did, We started off, we tried to have a July 4th festival here in Lower Manhattan, and there was some support for that. But then as it got closer to the date, everybody said, well, we can't ask our people to come out on July 4th. That's their holiday. Who's going to come to Lower Manhattan? The next year, when the Hermione was here, we tried to have an impromptu parade. We didn't have Brian Carter, who's here from New Rochelle, New York, was our drummer. And we got some people together from the Veterans Corps of Artillery and the Sons of the Revolution Color Guard. But the idea of the parade, I always believed, was based on Tom Cruise's Born on the 4th of July, with the actor Tom Cruise, the movie, where everybody walked through the town of Massapequa. The major political leaders came out, and people would really have marching bands, and they'd really celebrate what the city was about on July 4th. So that's really been our model, and that's what we've been trying to do for the last couple of years. We tried several routes. This route was designed by the senior walking tour guides at the Francis Maverick Museum to get the most important historical monuments in Lower Manhattan in one march. We realized that people not everybody would want to get up at 2 in the morning, but hopefully more people would come out for a parade. So that's where we are today. And if you'll bear with me for another 5 or 10 minutes, I want to just go over the route of the parade so you understand where we're going. We don't have an acoustic guide that I can give you a narration, but let me start. We start here at Battery Park, and we walk to Bowling Green in front of the U.S. Customs House. Now, the U.S. Customs House is one of the great Beaux-Arts buildings of the city, if not, which means the country. It was built in 1907 by the architect Cass Gilbert, and the purpose of Gilbert was a Beaux-Arts trained architect, which meant that he believed that a public building, and the U.S. Customs Department was the most important federal building, should educate people, should tell people who they are and what we are, and present a certain vision of the government. And of course, the President of the United States, his boss, was Theodore Roosevelt. Now, I want you to look as you walk by the 4 statues of the continents by Daniel Chester French, who did the Lincoln Memorial. You'll see on the right, you're right, you'll see Africa, the sleeping giant. On the left, you'll see Asia with its teeming masses. Then next to Africa, you'll see Europe, proud and regal. But the 4th statue, the most dynamic statue, is the United States of America with its wreath of land, with its leading the way. You see what Gilbert was trying to, and Roosevelt was trying to say to us here in Lower Manhattan. We are the future of the world will be ours. We will be the major force in the 20th century. That's what they believed. And they wanted people who worked here, who were, of course, the headquarters for many of the major J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller's office were up the street, but also the 1.2 million immigrants came through to Ellis Island in 1907. They wanted them to know, this is who we are, this is what we're about. And they hoped, I'm sure, that 120 years hence, everybody who walked by would have the same vision. Now, of course, I, for 5 years, got off the subway at the Bowling Green subway stop. I can't say that I felt that all my subway riders really quite got that. But I want you to, when you walk by. I want you to remember that, okay? So now, from there we go down Whitehall Street. I've discovered in the San Francisco Maritime Museum, they referred to Whitehall boats, which were the boats that went out to the stevedores when a ship came into the harbor. Universally in the English language, the Whitehall boats, based on Whitehall Street, would be because that's where the ship's chandeliers were. For us, like Lambros and I, who grew up during the draft times of Vietnam, Whitehall Street was also very famous, because 33 Whitehall Street was the draft induction center. I don't know how many of you have probably seen or heard the song Alice's Restaurant. Well, that took at 33 Whitehall Street. From there, we're going to go down to Florence's Tavern. Florence's Tavern is really, in my opinion, the most historically important building in the city of New York. related to the revolution and perhaps in the country. That it was once said to me when I first started giving tours for them by one of the lead guides that I was where George Washington said his farewell address to his men on December 9th, 1783 when he left. But it's now much more than that. From 1787 to 1790, when the Fed capital went to Philadelphia, it was the headquarters of the federal government. The Department of the Treasury, the Department of War, the Department of Defense, the Department of State, all worked in that building. That included Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton. They all worked there, and there's now an exhibit there to that fact. But even more importantly, in my opinion, about Fraunces Tavern, it was where they came on November 25th, 1783. It was where George Washington's men met for a dinner, which was Evacuation Day. How many of you have ever heard of Evacuation Day? Some, but not all. Evacuation Day was the day on which the American Army marched into New York City, which was the last place where the British were, and officially ended the war, the Revolutionary War. It had taken 2 years of wrangling and negotiations, and Washington was a very formal fellow, and he said he would not march into the city unless the American flag was flying. So they had this whole ceremony where the Americans would march down Broadway. The British, many of whom had been here for generations, would leave to go to Canada. But the British had greased the pole at Bowling Green of the flag raise. So the question was, this was going to blow the whole ceremony, deliberately by the British. But a young sailor named John Van Arsdale bought some cleats here and shimmied up and pulled down the flag and then put up the American flag. And that was a great victory. And that evening, Washington and his men went to Fraunces Tavern, where they had a dinner. It said that Thomas Paine, General Horatio Gates, and most of the other officers may have been there. And they gave 13 toasts, one for each colony. But the toast, some to the French, some to the Swedish, some to the others. My favorite toast is the last one, which said, "May the remembrance of this day be a lesson to princes." And what they were saying was, yes, we've now won the American Revolution, but the world is ruled by kings. But it's not always going to be that day, gentlemen. The American army, American democracy will sweep through the world. Now, they didn't know that in 1783, but you can see that by 1900, we were well along. Evacuation Day was a major holiday here in New York for 150 years. British military groups, particularly the Veteran Corps of Artillery, which was founded by John Van Arsdale and his compatriots in 1790 to defend the city against the British, ever came back. As one of the, I noticed that a newspaper article this week said they were 100% successful. The British never came back. But the point was that there would be major celebrations, and every year they would raise the flag. And John Van Arsdale actually would raise the flag until 1838 when he was 80. And then after him, his son David would raise it for the next 50 years. And that was a great ceremony here at Bowling Green.
Where do we go next, Jim?
Okay.
Where do we go next?
Okay. Next we go up Broad Street to the Goldman. 85 Broad Street was Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs was the most famous, probably the most powerful financial institution in the city. You may recall that Robert Rubin, who was the Secretary of Treasury under Bill Clinton, his job before that was President of Goldman Sachs. Who was the Secretary of Treasury under George W. Bush? It was Hank Paulson. What was his job? President of Goldman Sachs. Who was the Secretary of Treasury under Donald Trump? Donald Minchin. Where did he work before that? Goldman Sachs. So that I think gives you an answer. Now there you're going to go up Broad Street past 60 Broad Street, which is where Mike Milken Mike Milken, as you may recall, the junk bond can was laid low by somebody who's recently been an ambitious prosecutor whose name was Rudy Giuliani. Then we go up to this New York Stock Exchange. You'll see a tree in front of the New York Stock Exchange. It's at You think that's a normal tree, just like a tree on the along the street. It isn't. It's there printed by the New York Stock Exchange to represent the Buttonwood Agreement. It's a Buttonwood tree. The Buttonwood Agreement, which was formed in 1792, would ultimately be the basis of the New York Stock Exchange, which now has $24 trillion, and the reason for the hegemony of the New York firm. Then we're going to go past the J.P. Morgan building, the old J.P. Morgan building, Wall Street. J.P. Morgan basically controlled the American economy with John D. Rockefeller here on Wall Street in the 1890s. But in 1896, a man named William Jennings Bryan gave his famous Cross of Gold speech. You will not crucify America on the Cross of Gold. And he went around the country saying, we've got to beat the power of Wall Street. We've got to knock these people. And everybody thought that that was going to happen. But his opponent, Mr. McKinley, said to immigrants, or said to visit people, he got from his back porch, that we're going to, you know, the one thing is, if you guys are English, or you guys are Jewish, Catholic, Italian, Spanish, I think there'll be a place for you. His slogan was a full dinner pail. There'll be a full dinner pail for all you guys. So vote with us. Don't vote for a wild guy like one. Everybody with the William Jennings Bryan was very assumed that he would win, but then on election day, McKinley won by 51% of the vote, more than 100,000 votes. So I guess you might say that John D. Rockefeller and the Morgans, their front man was McKinley, understood America better than he did. Okay, from there we're going to go across Wall Street. We're going to go past the Trump, what's called the Trump building. I could tell you more about that. I once worked there. Okay. Once worked there.
Get us to the seaport.
And then we're going to go over to the South Street Seaport. The South Street Seaport has been one of the most controversial issues in our day here in Lower Manhattan. There was what to me was a fantastic New England town meeting with more than 600 people testifying at 5 different hearings. Proud to say that our group was, and we were in support of the Howard Hughes Corporation, who was the promoter of the thing. Very bitterly opposed by residents up in the north end of the city, but recently the city council approved it. So for the first time last year, there was a concert on the Sphere 16, just like the old concerts with Pete Seeger, Joan Baez, all the others. Now you may not remember those concerts, but we do. I do anyway. And at the end of the tour, at the end of the walk, I want you to stay with us because we have 2 great performers. We have Linda Russell, who's one of the great singers, and we have Jonathan Kruk, who's marching with it. Jonathan, are you around here? Jonathan?
He's there.
Jonathan Kruk. He bills himself as the greatest Hudson Valley storyteller, but I'll say we've had him perform for us before, and he's also the greatest storyteller here in New York City too. So I urge you to come with us, join with us. Now this is an open parade. Anybody who's here to join it, you don't need an invitation. I'm inviting you now. So I say pick up a flag, join behind us, and you can tell your friends when we're at the beach or at Aunt Bessie's backroom barbecue. You walked with the Lower Manhattan Historical Society through the streets of Lower Manhattan in one of the great historic parades of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we take off, I want to direct your attention to the list of all the organizations that are supporting us here. I want to give special thanks to Catherine Hughes, who's, one-person personal relations department. I, want to thank the Kim Lau Chinese Memorial Post, American Legion Post, the Color Guard of the Sons of the Revolution of the State of New York, and the Veteran Corps of Artillery. We're going to follow the bagpipers. Okay, so I think as we go out, we're heading down, you heard the route, have people leading you. We'll be led by the Sprague bagpipers who are here. The bagpipers. We're a bagpipe. Okay, we get led by the Sprague bagpipers. Ready, guys? Ready.
Yeah, you're right. This is
Left, right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, gonna hit the wall.
Nice to see you.
We're working for those votes today. Walking.
Thanks.
Yankee Doodle, fa-sol-la, trumpet, drum, and fiddle. America's a dandy place, the people all are brothers, and when one's got a pumpkin pie, he shares it with the others. Yankee Doodle boys, huzzah, down outside up the middle. Yankee Doodle, fa-sol-la, trumpet, drum, and fiddle. And then on Independence Day, and who's a better right to? We'll eat and drink and sing and play and have a dance at night too. Yankee Doodle boys, huzzah, down outside up the middle. Yankee Doodle, fa-sol-la, trumpet, drum, and fiddle. And that, thank you, that is Yankee Doodle 1820s style.
Thank you, Linda. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Pier 16 on the East River, part of the South Street Seaport Museum. Welcome marchers, members, and friends of the Lower Manhattan Historical Association, and a special welcome to Councilmember Gail Brewer. Congratulations on your 7th annual Independence Day Parade, ending right here at Pier 16. My name is Zach Reisinger. I'm the Manager of Engagement and Public Programming at the Seaport Museum. Thank you, yes. Our museum's president, Captain Jonathan Boulware, is not here with us today. He had family obligations, but sends his very best regards and has asked me to make a few brief remarks on behalf of the South Street Seaport Museum, then we'll get on with the program. We stand here today in an important and irreplaceable site, the South Street Seaport Historic District, a collection of 19th century buildings and piers that was saved by the museum from imminent demolition in the 1960s, and today is the last vestige of a massive trading port that evolved from a Dutch trading colony to the financial capital of the world in a rise that is quite likely the most rapid growth of a metropolis in the history of the world. For 55 years, the Seaport Museum has illuminated the stories of that growth, and we look forward to many more years of that important work. The rise of New York is a complex set of histories, ones that are perhaps more important today than they have been at any other time. These stories are our collective past, and they inform our present and our future if we view them directly and honestly. New York grew from a Dutch colonial effort that forcibly removed the Lenape people from the island of Manhattan, a word that in their language means hilly island. The Dutch founded New Amsterdam on economic principles that the historian Russell Shorto described as tolerance and trade. And while the word tolerance might be stretched to its very limits in describing the long arc of New York, we can see the continued resonance of these themes in New York today. New York was further built by the emerging globalized trade that defined the 18th and 19th centuries, a massive emergence of manufacturing and trade center whose rise was substantially fueled by the labor of enslaved people brought from African shores and themselves traded on Wall Street. Today we live in a New York that can and must represent a broader American ideal. These ideals formed the world's longest-lived democracy, and today can be a roadmap for the future. In a time of national division and strain, our great hope lies in understanding our own history, an unvarnished view of the growth of New York and America, including the stories of the many people who built our nation, who worked, who planned, and thought. This is the work of our museum and the task of all of us going forward. Today, I wish you a good Independence Day, but I also wish you a thoughtful one. May our collective attention to the good of all people inform our work. May New York serve as an example, and may we celebrate the 250th birthday of our nation in 4 years' time, having strengthened this still imperfect union. Thank you.
We have an open house on the waiver tree today, right, Zach? Yes. This open house, okay, open house on the waiver tree today for free entry. If you haven't been there before, check it out. Open house at Francis Tavern Museum. Have a new exhibit for the executive offices of the then United States during the Confederation period, where John Jay, Henry Knox, and the Treasury Board met. Check that out. In the meantime, we're blessed to have Jonathan Kruk and Linda Russell, the great Linda Russell, folk singer extraordinaire, to finish up our program for us. Who's next? You're next. Okay, Linda. Go.
Thank you. Yes, I've taken you to 1820s New York with that first tune I did. 1820s New York, 4th of July, started at sunrise when all the church bells in all of Manhattan began ringing. And then by mid-morning, the cannons fired from the battery and from the ships. And then, of course, firecrackers all day. But all around City Hall in the 1820s were tables with food and drink for the 4th. There were piles of clams and oysters and lobsters and boiled pork in the hot sun for your delight, and everything to drink but water. That was 4th of July. And it was a rip-roaring time. And I think a song that will tell us something about that is a song that made this place what it is, and that is the Erie Canal. Because the Erie Canal opened New York, made New York the world city it still is, because it was the great opening of the West. Very exciting, celebrating the opening of the canal in 1825. But if you're working on the canal, it's much less exciting because it was a ditch from Buffalo to Albany. And so the canalers got good and drunk and sang about life on the raging canal. We were 40 miles from Albany. Forget it, I never shall. What a terrible time we had one night on the Erie Canal. Ooh, the Erie was a-rising and the gin was a-getting low. I scarce did think we'd get a drink till we get to Buffalo. We get to Buffalo. Well, the first mate, he went out on deck, spyglass in his hand. The fog it was so tarnal thick he couldn't spy the land. Oh, the Erie was a-rising, the gin was a-getting low. I scarce did think we'd get a drink till we get to Buffalo. We get to Buffalo. Well, the cook, she was a grand old gal, wore a ragged dress. We hoisted her upon the pole as a signal of distress. The Erie was a-rising, the gin was a-getting low. I scarce did think we'd get a drink till we get to Buffalo. We get to Buffalo. Well, the barge was full of barley and the crew was full of rye. Captain, he looked down on me with a gall-dang wicked eye. Oh, the Erie was a-rising and the gin was a-getting low. I scarce did think we'd get a drink till we get to Buffalo. We get to Buffalo. And this is the mountain dulcimer, early American folk instrument that is lending its joy to this occasion. Well, July 4th, 1827 was Emancipation Day. It was at last the day that slavery was abolished in New York State. Huzzah! Huzzah! July 4th, 1827. And all the city's black churches held services of prayers and thanksgiving on that 4th of July. This day, said one of the ministers, we stand redeemed from a bitter thraldom. No more shall the accursed name of slave be attached to us. No more shall Negro and slave be synonymous. But the celebrants, the celebrants quietly left after the church services because of the over-partying being done up and down Broadway, and they were afraid. So they went home, and then on July 5th, they 4,000 strong marched down to City Hall cheering all the way. So that is something to celebrate. And so it calls for an anthem. And an anthem happens to be written in 1831 that we all know. I'm going to play it with a feather because that's the traditional way of playing the dulcimer. And this anthem, written in Boston by a minister who wanted a song for his 4th of July Sunday school picnic. And you know what it was. It was this. Please sing along. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. 1831. Well, New York, as the 20s and 1830s, 40s goes on, becomes even more huge because of this seaport. And so, a song to commemorate those New York days, the Blackball Line was the most famous of the packet ships that ran between Liverpool and New York. And that started in 1816. But this song is from 1844, and we know that because it talks about the rage dance that has just come over from Europe, and that would be what? Yes, the polka. Could you move this? Thank you. sing. As I walked down on Broadway one evening in July, I met a maid who asked my trade, a Sailor John, says I, and away, yes, Auntie, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can't you dance a polka? To Tiffany's I took her, I did not mind expense. Bought her 2 gold earrings, cost me 15 cents. And away, yes, Auntie, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can't you dance a polka? She says, you lime juice sailor, see me home you may. But when we reached her cottage door, she unto me did say, and away, yes, Auntie, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can't you dance a polka? My flashman, he's a Yankee, with his hair cut short behind. He wears a terry jumper and he sails on the blackball line. And away, yes, Auntie, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can't you dance a polka? He's homeward bound this evening, with me he will stay. So go your way, you sailor boy, get cracking on your way. And away, yes, Auntie, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can't you dance a polka? I joined a Yankee blood boat, I sailed away next morn. Don't ever fool with New York girls, you're safer off Cape Horn. And away, yes, Auntie, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can't you dance a polka? Thank you. Well, the last song that would have been sung, that this pier would have heard in those sailing days, was this one, because it was the homeward bound song. It was the song that you sang that you got your complaints out in. You couldn't complain about the captain or the terrible food out in the middle of the ocean. It wouldn't go well for you. But as you're coming in and you see land and you, I'm going to be on that land, I'm going to get it out right now in this beautiful song. The times were hard and the wages were low. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. And now once more ashore we'll go. It's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. It was rotten meat and weevilly bread. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Eat it or starve, the old man said. It's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. The waves were hard, the work was hard. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. From the Liverpool dock to the Brooklyn yard. It's time for us to leave her. And it's time for me to leave you, but I'm going to leave you in incredible hands, because Jonathan Kruk is going to tell you of the tales of New York on the 4th of July when it all began.
Please, another round of applause for Linda Russell. Indeed, I'm Jonathan Kruk, with the honor of serving as your storyteller for the Lower Manhattan Historical Association. I'm going to tell a transcendent story of something that happened here July 9th, 1776, when George Washington fretted, worried, what to do about the thousands and thousands of red-coated British troops who were, well, looking to do things like bring down these rebellious flags calling for liberty and independence. Well, this document arrived in his hands, and rather than keeping it just amongst himself and those who were in power, he ordered that this document be read out loud here in the city of Manhattan, the lower end of the aisle, the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the rights of the people to alter or abolish it and institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together his legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into complying with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing these laws, for naturalizing foreigners, refusing to pass to others their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of the appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges depended on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out our substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of a superior power of the civilian. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction of foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing a free system of English laws, in a neighboring promise, establishing therein an arbitrary government by enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit for instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into the colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our legislatures and declaring us invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coast, and burnt our towns, and destroyed our lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely unparalleled in the most barbarous of ages. And totally unworthy is he as the head of a civilized nation. He's excited domestic insurrections among us and endeavored to bring on our inhabitants and our frontiers merciless savages whose known rule is of warfare. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress. In most humble terms, our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be a ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in our attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of our attempts by their legislature to extend unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and our settlement. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our communion kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war and peace in friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, the General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. The Declaration of Independence, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jonathan Crook. Thank you and huzzah!
Down with the king!
The last word from the Seaport, Zach.
Thank you all for coming. As mentioned, the Seaport Museum is free, so go ahead and check out our Waiver Tree, Lighthouse, tours of the Ambrose, and our galleries at 12 Fulton, and Bound & Company is open as well on Water Street. Thank you all.
Yeah, great. Thank you for coming to our 7th annual and first punctual 4th of July parade. Thanks to South Street Seaport. Thanks for all our supporting organizations. You had a thought, Jim? Anyway, I appreciate everybody.
We always end our events by saying, come back next year.
Okay, come to the 8th annual and second punctual 4th of July parade. You got a shake.
Even better now.